My name is Faith, and 4 years ago, I married Peter, who worked at a car dealership. We were happy together, with big dreams of owning our own home one day. I worked as a designer at a major advertising agency, and we lived in a small, cheap apartment. Life was manageable, and although we didn't have much, we had each other. Peter's mother, however, was a thorn in our side, especially in mine. She had never liked me. In her eyes, I was not good enough for her son, and she never missed an opportunity to remind me of that fact. It all started to get worse after Peter lost his job. He had been let go from the car dealership due to some corporate downsizing. It wasn't his fault, but it still felt like the rug had been pulled from under us. With his income gone, we could no longer afford to keep up with our rent. We had to find a solution, and that meant moving in with Peter's mother, something I had been dreading for a long time. "Hey, I know it might not be ideal, but how about we ask Mom if we can stay at her place for a while?" Peter said one night, his eyes filled with worry. I hesitated, my stomach twisting in knots at the thought of living with her. But we had no choice. We needed a roof over our heads, and we needed to save whatever money we could. So, reluctantly, I agreed. A week later, we moved in. The first day was awkward, to say the least. Peter's mother greeted us with her usual disdainful smirk. "Welcome," she said, barely hiding her dislike. "If you're going to stay here, you better pull your weight. Cleaning, cooking, laundry, it's all on you, Faith." I swallowed my pride and nodded. I figured that as long as we had a place to stay, I could put up with her demands. But I underestimated just how relentless she could be. Every day after work, I found myself running around, cleaning up after her, cooking dinner, doing laundry, and attending to her every whim. It was exhausting, and I felt my patience wearing thin. "Aren't you coming home too late?" she'd ask, her voice dripping with disdain. "Look at the state of this house, it's filthy. And don't forget to make dinner. I'm starving." I wanted to shout back, to tell her that I was working long hours to keep us afloat, that I wasn't her maid. But I held my tongue, afraid of causing a scene and getting kicked out. I kept hoping that Peter would step in, that he'd see how much I was struggling and do something about it. But Peter seemed to be lost in his own world. He spent his days lounging on the sofa, job hunting half-heartedly, and generally ignoring the growing tension between his mother and me. One night, after a particularly long day, I decided to talk to Peter about it. "Your mother told me I should quit my job if I can't manage the housework," I said, exhaustion lining my voice. "I need you to ask her to help out a little. It's too much for me." Peter looked at me with a lazy smile. "Maybe you should quit, Faith. It's not like we need that much money to live here." His indifference stung me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If I quit my job, we wouldn't have any income at all. It was clear to me then, I couldn't rely on Peter. He wasn't going to stand up for me, and he wasn't going to change. 3 months went by like this, each day more draining than the last. My mother-in-law's demands grew more unreasonable, and Peter remained as passive as ever. I was at my breaking point. I had to get out, or I was going to lose myself completely. I decided that I would buy a new house, somewhere that could be my sanctuary, far away from the constant harassment. "Peter, I've decided," I said one evening. "We're buying a new house." He shrugged, barely paying attention. "Yeah, sure, whatever you want." I wasted no time. I found a newly built home. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was mine. I signed the contract that very day. Finally, I would be free from my mother-in-law and her constant torment, or so I thought. 2 weeks later, Peter and I moved into our new home. I thought that this was it, the beginning of a new chapter, but that hope was shattered on the first weekend after we moved in. I was just getting ready to unpack when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked the monitor. To my horror, it was my mother-in-law. I hadn't given her the address. How did she find out where we lived? With a sense of dread, I opened the door. She barged in without waiting for an invitation, looking around the house as if she owned it. "Nice place," she said, her eyes cold. "I've decided I'm moving in." I blinked, stunned. "Wait, what? You can't just decide that. This is my house." She sneered at me. Peter bought this house, didn't he? That makes it my house, too. You, Faith, can take the attic. It's more suited for someone like you. Her words echoed in my head, and for the first time, I felt something inside me snap. Enough, I said, my voice shaking. Enough with the insults. If you want the house so badly, fine, take it, but I'm not staying here. She laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. That's right, you should have listened to me from the start. Now I'll live here comfortably while you're out on the street. I packed my things that day. Peter barely reacted, only looking confused. What are you doing, Faith? Why are you packing? I'm leaving, I said, my voice resolute. I'm done with you and your mother. She treats me like a maid, and you let her. I bought this house to escape her, and now you're letting her take it over too. I'm done, Peter. I want a divorce. Peter looked shocked. Divorce? Come on, it's not that serious. We're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. A real family wouldn't treat me this way. You wouldn't treat me this way. He didn't have anything to say to that. I handed him the divorce papers that I had kept, just in case. Sign them, I said. I'm leaving tonight. With shaky hands, Peter signed the papers. I took them and left without looking back. I went straight to the real estate office. I want to sell my house, I told the clerk. He was surprised, but he agreed to help. I didn't need that house anymore. It was tainted by everything I had endured there. I moved back to my parents' house. They were shocked when I told them what had happened, but they welcomed me back with open arms. My father was furious, wanting to confront Peter and his mother, but I stopped him. I don't want anything to do with them anymore, I said. They're not worth it. 2 weeks went by, and I heard nothing from Peter or his mother. I assumed they were still living in the house, unaware that I had put it up for sale. Then, one day, I got a call from the real estate agent. We found a buyer, he said, but the buyer wants the fence demolished before they move in. I smiled. That's fine. In fact, I'd like to be there for it. The demolition was scheduled for the following Saturday. I arrived early, eager to see how it would unfold. The workers gathered, and soon, the sound of heavy machinery filled the air. I watched as the fence began to come down, piece by piece. Suddenly, the front door flew open, and my mother-in-law came running out, her face twisted in anger. What is going on? Stop this right now, she screamed. I stepped forward, a smile playing on my lips. Hello, mother-in-law. Long time no see. She glared at me. Faith, stop them. This is my house. I shook my head. Actually, it's not. I sold it. You need to leave. She looked stunned, her face going pale. What do you mean you sold it? Peter bought this house. No, I said, my voice calm. I bought this house, and now I've sold it. You need to leave, or I'll have you removed. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment she seemed at a loss for words. Then she turned to Peter, who had come outside as well. Peter, do something. Peter looked at the ground, his face flushed with embarrassment. Mom, Faith is right. She bought the house. We have to leave. She let out a frustrated scream, but there was nothing she could do. The house was no longer theirs. I turned and walked away, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt free. 2 weeks later, I received a message from Peter. He had moved into a small apartment and found a job at an auto factory. He apologized, saying he finally understood what I had gone through. I deleted the message without replying. It was too late for regrets. I was done with that part of my life. Now I'm focused on myself. I've learned to stand up for myself, to fight for my own happiness. I've started a new chapter, one where I don't have to answer to anyone but myself, and it feels amazing.